Hey there, this is Andrew with Android Central, and we're continuing a few different interviews here from SDC 2014 in San Francisco. And I've got Jeff Hagans here, who's the co-founder and CTO of SmartThings. Obviously, SmartThings is kind of one of the huge names here after coming in with Samsung and coming out with some really interesting things we just heard about at the keynote. What are you, right off the top, what are you most excited about now that you have the power of Samsung, which is this crazy name behind SmartThings?
It's huge. It's a huge company, and they've got a global presence. Obviously, at SDC, I think we're most excited about just the opportunity to reach more developers. Right. At the end of the day, while SmartThings is a platform for consumers, right, to turn your home into a smart home. It's also a platform for developers, right? Our vision from the very beginning has been that a developer should be able to write an app for your home, for the physical world, right? And you should be able to install that app into your home in the same way that you install an app on your smartphone. And so, obviously, the opportunity to reach a broader global audience of developers is super exciting. But even more than that, now we've got the integration with Samsung devices, right? So we're demoing a bunch of integrated Samsung devices, refrigerator, air conditioner, robot vacuum cleaner, right? All sorts of crazy stuff downstairs in our smart home. And that's just the beginning, right? We're going to integrate with, ultimately, all of the different Samsung smart devices over time. And the more devices that are out there that are connected to our platform, the more reason there is for developers to get excited about working with our kind of platform. I use this example a lot where I talk about a typical developer, a typical web developer, let's say, and I ask the question, for a typical web developer, would you know how to write an app if somebody said, hey, I need you to write an app that is gonna receive lat-long locations from a phone to geofence around a location, right? And when you arrive at home, based on the GPS in your phone, I want your app to turn on the lights, adjust the thermostat, and start your Sonos playing on your favorite Pandora music station, right? And most developers, I get a kind of a blank look, right? Because
that would normally be a huge undertaking.
It would be a huge undertaking, and they don't have the first idea about how to even begin that, right? They might understand a little bit about the GPS, right, on the phone, but they don't have the first idea about how to tackle a problem like that. And, with our platform, the app that I just described is like 10 lines of code.
Right, so you're giving them all the building blocks, but you guys can't come up with every idea and every scenario that somebody would want.
Correct.
Maybe it's something, like you said, involves their lights and music, or maybe it's their garage door opener and it turns off their oven or something like that, right? It could be anything.
And not only can we not come up with it, I think the bigger point is that everyone's home and how they want their home to behave in this world of a future smart home is unique, right? Your home is gonna be like your fingerprint. It's gonna be unique to you, and you're gonna want your home to react around you in ways that are unique to you and your family and your pets and your whatever, right? And so, how do you deliver that? It isn't with, a static application that only does one set of things, right? You've got to create an ecosystem that allows developers to solve these problems in unique ways, in ways that are maybe even culturally different in one country versus another, right? And with a product suite that's different in one country versus another. It's something as simple as whether it's the thermostat on the wall or the light switches, right? Guess what? Those are different all over the world. They're different in different countries. Thermostat doesn't even necessarily mean the same thing to somebody in the UK that it does to us in the US. So how do you do that? And the answer is that you create a platform that creates levels of abstraction that make it easy for device makers to connect their devices to the platform, right? And then make it easy for developers to interact with those devices. And that's what we've done with SmartThings. We are really the only true developer platform for the home. Lots of folks have APIs, right? that, when we talk about being a developer platform, of course we have APIs, but that isn't what we're talking about, right? We're talking about the ability to write code and have it run on our platform without the developer having to worry about how devices connect or where the devices even are, right? What protocols they use. But even more importantly, they don't even have to know where their code is going to run, right? That they can just publish an app, the consumer installs it, and it just works.
Right, and as a consumer, you don't want to have to think about, what the platform is or how it plugs in or what, necessarily what brand they're buying or anything like that. They just want to know that it's going to work together. Like you said, you could have, a Sonos speaker system, and then you could have other kind of light switches. You could have, Samsung appliances, and it's all going to be able to work together. And that's something that we haven't seen before, especially in the home automation or, smart home kind of arena. So how do you guys tackle it from the point of it can be everything from, like you said, a robot vacuum to a light switch to a garage door opener to a sprinkler system or whatever. How do you work with that broad range of things? It seems, so mind-boggling to somebody who doesn't deal with the platform.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, let me say that's why we chose to join forces with Samsung, right? Because they believed in this idea of open, right? And whether the devices that are connecting to our platform are, is a Samsung refrigerator or somebody else's refrigerator, Samsung believes in that idea of being open, and we want to connect every device that we can possibly connect onto the platform. We chose to do that in a way that doesn't require that we actually do all the work. And that's really critical, where we're able to leverage our community of developers so that they can go and help us do some of this work, right? We support devices from all different manufacturers, and we have these community developers that help us onboard those devices by writing what's called a device type. And a device type on our platform is the pluggable piece of software that talks to the device in whatever its language is, and then plugs into the platform and exposes that device to our platform with standardized capabilities. So for example, if you're writing a device type for a light switch, right? A light switch has some basic capabilities like on and off, right? Now, an application developer only needs to know that much. Right. You can turn it on, you can turn it off.
Right, they don't need to know the kind of light switch or where it is in the house necessarily, unless they need to.
So the developer that onboards the device, they have the hardest job. They have the hardest job to do because they're the ones that are writing that pluggable piece of software that bridges between these standardized capabilities and the real protocol for how you talk to the device, right? So those developers, the device type developers, they do the most complex work on our platform. Right. But thankfully, we've got a vibrant community of those developers who are adding new devices to our platform all the time. And that way, all we have to do is test and certify those device types to make sure that they really work, right? Yeah. And then we can publish them and release them for our consumers to use, and more importantly, for the app developers to use, right? And so the two kinds of developers on our platform: device type developers, smart app developers, both super critical to the ultimate story here, right? But the vision ultimately was to make it easy to write apps, right? Because that's where the value is delivered, right? The value isn't in connecting the device. The value is being able to write apps that use the device.
And that's what the consumers see. That's the front end, where all this other stuff in the background, it works, and that's great. But if there's no interface that they can get into, like you said, there's no app in the store that they can go see, and they're not going to write it themselves, obviously. So, if the app developers aren't there to give a front end to it, then it's kind of all for nothing a little bit. So it's important. I'm sure you guys are, making it. We've talked about it. Developers all over the place here at SDC that want to talk about, what can I do with this? And you guys are giving them an awesome platform.
We're giving them an awesome platform. We're giving device type developers a way to get their devices on that platform, right? And listen, we're living in a world where, yeah, there are hero devices, right, out there that come with the device that connects to the cloud, and it comes with its own mobile app, and really sexy kind of devices that we call hero devices. But there are also a huge number of devices that are not hero devices, that are really pedestrian kinds of devices that would never have their own mobile app, right? Like, we've got a controllable water valve down in the house downstairs that is a main water valve, right? So that if we detect a flood anywhere in your house, we can shut off the water to the whole house and prevent a disaster, prevent a flood, right? Now, that's not a type of device that would come with its own mobile app, right? Nobody would buy the main water valve and just sit there controlling it with your mobile app. Who cares, right? It only makes sense in the context of the smart home, right? Of an intelligent home that has software applications that can actually make use of multiple devices, right? Where the intelligence is decoupled from the devices themselves. When I sense water over here, turn off this water valve, right? And it highlights something that we think is super important, which is we believe in the separation of intelligence from the devices themselves, right? We believe that keeping that application intelligence separate and loosely coupled with the devices and not tightly coupled is how consumers get cheaper devices and more consumer choice about what they're going to do in their home, right?
Right. I mean, not everybody has the same size home, type of home. Something like you said, a main water valve in your house, not as important to somebody that lives in an apartment building or a condo building. They want something different, and they want other kinds of automation. So, I gotta ask, at your house, what is your favorite little thing that maybe isn't like the flashiest thing, but that you've put automation into your own home? I'm sure you're always messing around with all kinds of things, but what's that cool thing that you're working on?
So I have 3 daughters. I travel a lot. My favorite thing is actually that when I'm coming home, that my phone breaks through the geofence. The system realizes that I'm pulling in the driveway or almost home, so that by the time I walk in the door, all of my kids are there waiting to greet me, right?
And that's a good use. No, that's something I would never, think of. And maybe some other app developers, you go to some other house, they wouldn't have thought of that either. So that's kind of the thing that the Smart Things is enabling, right?
That's right.
That's wonderful, and I'm sure that a lot of developers that 2 floors below us are coming up with all kinds of crazy things just like that, or above and beyond, I'm sure. But Jeff Hagins, I appreciate the time. It's fantastic. We're going to be coming to you with more interviews from SDC 14. Keep it right here on Android Central.